So, are you looking to get out of the rat race in 2025? Do you want cash flow over $250,000 in 2025? The only way you're going to do that is by buying a profitable business. There is no other way to achieve this. And in today's video, I'm going to break down my entire methodology of how my business acquisition group purchased over $50 million worth of businesses in 2024, and we are set to double that in 2025. So pay attention. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I am your host, Leo Landaverde, business broker and commercial lender, helping you buy and scale a profitable business. All right, you guys ready? So I'm gonna lay out my entire blueprint in 8 easy to follow steps. Number 1, buy box. Now look, so what happens is most people looking to buy a business just get overly excited and start looking at deals without really knowing what they want. It's like shopping for a house without really knowing the type of house and the type of neighborhood and the type of curb appeal that you want. A lot of people have that wrong. So the concept that came out of frustration that I noticed a lot of buyers in my early days doing mergers and acquisitions, the buyers would come to me without really knowing what they wanted. And the number one thing that us business brokers and M&A advisors care about is that you as a buyer know what you're talking about, that you have done the work. So we came up with this concept of the buy box that we teach in detail inside of our group. But basically think of it as your calling card. It shows preparation, motivation, planning. So what it is a sort of a document that can translate into an email template that you can send to either off-market or on-market sources. On-market, you're going to be dealing with brokers. Off-market, you're going to be dealing with sellers. So the concept is that you have taken the time up front to count the cost of buying a business. Like, for instance, you want to know how much money you have, what your credit score is. Do you have a personal financial statement? What is your statement on net worth? Have you talked to any lenders? Things that brokers are going to want to know from you at some point. You've done the work ahead of time. So a buyback is basically the who, the how, the what, the where, and how long, right? What type of business are you trying to buy? And the reality is that most people, when they buy a business, I think where most people go wrong is they actually start looking for businesses based on cash flow alone. You see $500,000 worth of cash flow. People get excited. They get excited. It's like everything that glitters becomes gold. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at buying a business. You want to first look at, yes, cash flow is important, but the problem is it doesn't matter how much cash flow a business is producing. If there are licensing requirements involved, if there is a location computation involved, and there is the economics of it that makes sense. If you have no management experience, it's not going to matter. You're not going to be able to be approved. So the cash flow is sort of incidental. It's sort of a part of the process. So the first things that we teach is understanding is like counting the cost. In the Bible, it says that if you want to go to war with and against another king, you first must estimate that if you with 10,000 soldiers can go up to somebody with 20,000. So the methodology is preparation. So I like to think of it that way. So how much money do you have? And I don't mean just the money for the down payment. A lot of people neglect other types of money that you're going to need that are required when you're buying a business. Like there is your down payment, what we call your equity injection. There is your working capital, which is the first month worth of cash that you're going to require to kind of get the business jump started once you buy it. And there's your post-closing liquidity. So if you only have $100,000 and that's all you have and it's all you leverage for, well, then out of that, you have to figure out, wait a minute, so how much post-closing liquidity will the bank require? So normally if you talk to a lender, the lender will say, well, I want you to have 10 and 10, right? So if you have $100,000 to put as an equity injection, I want you to have $100,000 worth of post-closing liquidity. Now, I'm just oversimplifying because if you talk to 10 different lenders, you're going to get 10 different answers. So there's a reason why people like working in a group, because we understand how to work with all the lenders, all the top tier SBA preferred lenders. So to follow the logic, right? So if you have $100,000 Technically, that equals to about $1 million purchase on a 3 times SDE at 333,000 gives you about $1 million purchase on a 90% loan to value. So now what happens to the working capital, right? Is it going to come from the seller? Is it going to come from you? Are we going to ask for it in a letter of intent, assuming that the cash flow is there, assuming that the debt service coverage ratio is there? So there are things that you need to think through long before you make an offer. So that's why it kind of comes back to the buy box. I teach my students, look, count the cost. Narrow your search down to 3 particular industries. I want you to know them cold, become a subject matter expert in no more than 3 industries, down to the 6-digit NAICS code that you're going to need. That NAICS code is very important for business valuation purposes, for lending purposes, for data research purposes, for industry research purpose, for many reasons. You need, if you made a decision to go into an industry you don't know very much about, it behooves you that you do the research up front. Because people, brokers, anybody you come in contact with will know whether you know something about the industry or not. And let me tell you, buying a business is a race to the finish line. There are literally 15 qualified buyers for every good business out there. So it is important that you set yourself apart, that you sell yourself as a premium 1% buyer. Because reality is only 10% of buyers buy. So how do you do that? By having an optimized buy box that you can turn into a thumbnail. Basically, it addresses anybody. Hey, here's who I am. My name is Leo Landaverde. I am an active investor looking to buy businesses in these 3 particular NAICS codes. And the reason why I'm involved and attracted to this because I have a subject matter expertise in all of these things. Basically, you take your professional resume, take your personal financial statement, and pull it into one, the letter of support that you got from the lender, and it starts to make what I call a circumstantial case for approval. What you really want as a buyer is to come across as a cash buyer. Cash is king. So as you're putting together, you start to think about, since there are hundreds, literally hundreds of industries out there, you can't go after them all. That's where most people go wrong. You can narrow it down, niche down to blow up, as they say. You got to narrow it down to, based on who you are, your passions, your knowledge, the money that you have, what type of businesses can you go after? So the reason I'm spending a lot of time in number 1 is because it's fundamental. It's baseline. It's the foundation of your search. Because if your foundation is not strong, it's not set on rock, deal flow, deal analysis, deal making, due diligence, and everything else that happens afterward will not matter because it will be wrong. So your buy box is basically an articulation of everything you want in a business in words that brokers and sellers will understand, because are going to be industry specific lingo you're going to use. You're going to learn how to prove by working together. And that's what we teach people inside of our groups. Everybody inside of our group is required to actually do dry runs on different buy boxes and emerge with the one that they think they feel more comfortable with, because you're going to have to utilize that. It's your calling card. It gives you the ability to get in front of the line so you can actually talk to people, talk to brokers, talk to banks, etc. Without it, nothing else will matter. Right, number 2 is deal flow. Now, deal flow is a byproduct of your buy box. So if you haven't watched that part, go back, watch that and come back. So deal flow. Now, deal flow is basically how many deals are you coming across? How is the flow of your deal? If you want to buy a business, so here are the stats. 122-1. In order for you to actually buy one business, you're going to need to have 100 quality looks at businesses, 20 in-depth analysis, at least 2 offers, and 1 gets accepted, hopefully closes. So if you know that, that's 1% success rate. But all you really need is 1 deal. So is it possible to buy 2 deals at once? Yes. Actually, one of our students is actually about to do that. Close on 1 deal is going to close. But on average, I recommend you buy 1 business at a time. So deal flow, we recommend a bifurcated approach of on market and off market. Now, the reason you go on market is only to vet what deals are out there and who are the brokers producing those deals. Remember what I told you about the NAICS codes? Well, in the industry segregation, there is a such thing as a specialization. Like brokers are narrowing down to X amount of industries. For instance, there are brokers that specialize only in self-storage, only in accounting firms, only in engineering firms, only in restaurants. And when you go to a broker, a business broker, or an M&A middle market advisor that specializes in those, they're going to know a lot more about what makes a business worthwhile, and they're going to be tending to price them better, right, according to the software that we use. So on market, your only goal is to be friendly, get to know the brokers associated with those industries, and really befriend them, become a value add. You're going to be able to, if you serve them in a way that they need to be served, if you become a value add to any business brokers, they're going to want to work with you. I can tell you that from experience, that I have worked over the years with buyers who actually are respectful. They communicate with me in the way that I want to be communicated to. So if I don't want you to call me on a Sunday at 5 p.m. because I'm not going to answer the phone. I never do. When I have listings, I have multiple listings in the market at any point in time. I don't answer my phones. So if you'd rather just email me, that's better. Use the protocols, the protocols that are required to work with those brokers. So all of that knowledge comes from having experience in the business. So on market, but that's not where the money is. If you really want to succeed in business acquisitions, you have to create a deal engine, and a deal source engine is only going to happen off market. I teach how to actually go and find, if you have those precious NAICS codes, how to actually do those searches that are going to yield that data that you need, the mailing address, the emails, the contact information that you can actually use to craft the specific letters to get in front of those sellers. And let me tell you, there is good and bad on both, right? The good thing about off market is that you actually have a one-on-one conversation with a seller. There's no brokers involved. There's no competition. It's just you and them one-on-one. So you don't have to feel like you're in a race to the finish. The problem when you're off market is that most business owners have no clue how much their business is worth. And that is the hardest part of my work, of my job as an M&A advisor, is to help a seller come to a reasonable valuation of their business. Let me illustrate this. I think most of you watching this video are gonna be familiar with buying a home. If you buy your first home, and then you bought a home, and then you're sitting on this home, and as time goes on, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. To you, your home is worth a whole lot more than what it might be really worth, right? So when I ask somebody who bought a house a year ago and they pay $500,000 for the house, they're going to say, oh, how much is, the house is worth $800,000 easy this, in today's day, a year later. It may or may not be true. So I really don't believe when a seller tells me what much the business is worth. I teach you how to actually value the business by the book, the way that a blender and a third-party evaluating company would do it. So that's the hardest thing when you're having off-market conversations. Get the seller to befriend you, to know, like, and trust you, so you can work together on a potential valuation. So while that's the hardest part, to arrive at a valuation, the trust factor is easier to achieve when it's off market, because otherwise you're dealing with on market. And when you're dealing with on market, you have a shield, you have a broker that is, you cannot go circumvent the broker. Once you sign an NDA and try to circumvent the broker and talk to a seller, you can't do that without violating your non-disclosure agreement. So with that said, how do you do this, right? So you have to learn how to befriend the brokers, because the thing is, what I teach is, and by the way, we have really great success inside of our group that is called Business Acquisition Mastery, where we're getting 50% of the deals off market, 50% of them are on market right now. When they're on market, most of the members of our group have great success talking to brokers and getting them to give them at least one deal a month. Imagine this. Imagine that if you have relationships with just 5 business brokers on those industries that you chose, and they're all giving you one deal per month for you to look at. That's 5 deals that you're vetting without having to do anything. Now, granted, they're only going to give you those deals if they assume that you are a qualified go-to cash buyer who's going to close. The only thing that we care as brokers is that you will close. If you're a closer, then we're going to give you the leads. We're going to give you those off-market pocket listings. So you see how that works? So deal flow. Now, once you get into it, you want to have a bifurcated approach. As I said, you want to be talking to on-market, you want to talk to off-market. There's many, many ways that we can procure off-market deals. That's a lesson for another day, but that's how we do it. Number 3, deal analysis. Now it's getting to be very exciting, guys. I love deal analysis. I've probably analyzed over 1,000 deals in my career. Now, I have built a tool which we call the Deal Analyzer 3.0 that is only shared to those who have paid inside of a group coaching program. If you want to know more, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to do a complimentary call. I have somebody in my team reach out to you. So, deal analysis. So this is really the crux of the matters. If you have a solid buy box and you have procuring deal flow and you're getting to deals and you're starting to really get quality looks at deals, the next thing to do is deal analysis. Now, deal analysis in this analysis tool is you want to know what you're going to need certain documents to make that happen. You're going to need this confidential information memorandum or confidential business review, whatever it's called. Most business brokers will call it a CIM, confidential information memorandum. In order for you to get that, you're going to have to sign an NDA. So you get the CIM. Now, the CIM is going to have information about the market, about the people, about the know-how, about the intellectual property, anything and everything that you think you need to have a first glance to actually make a decision if you want to move forward on this deal. But word of caution, most CIMs will not have the financial data that we're going to need to actually get this deal pre-approved before we make an offer. Let me tell you what I mean. A lot of brokers out there, even some of the biggest franchises, are not thorough enough in doing the recasting per the tax returns. So they'll take the interim financials, which is the ones that are generated by the business itself, and not the tax returns. I can only release CIMs that actually have recasts of tax returns. Now, a recast is fine, which means you're not letting your buyers see the actual tax returns, but you're actually projecting some of that data from the tax returns that are going to match to the penny into specific spreadsheets that are going to tie out to the tax returns. That's called recasting. So to do it properly, for you to do deal analysis properly, you're going to need a confidential information memorandum, and you're going to need 3 years worth of tax returns preceding 3 years, and you're going to need the interim, which is the current year. Now, here we are recording this video in January 2025. So if I was looking at a deal today in January 2025, what I would need is I would need the 21, 22, and 2023 tax returns, whether it's S Corp, Partnership, Schedule C, C Corp, LLC, whatever it is, those tax returns. I would want the fully completed, reconciled 2024 P&L and balance sheet. The problem is that where we are, we may or may not have those interim financials done, but whatever you can get it. So that gives you a 4-year window. I usually like to have 5 years. Most brokers will only give you 3 years. Sometimes we'll give you only 2 years. You want to be able to have enough years to average some information, because the percentages, what I teach, are more important than the numbers themselves. Let me explain. So trending happens over the bigger the sample, the more accurate the trending. So one of the things that we teach is, if we actually have the tax returns, we're going to recast, we're going to take those tax returns and we're going to superimpose them into the OC, which is the operating concern sheet, in our deal analyzer, and we're going to true them up, and we're going to look at your revenue, your net sales, your cost of goods, if any. It's going to give you your gross profit minus the operating expense, officer comp, and whatever key, the rent, interest, depreciation, amortization, whatever else goes in there. And then we're going to tie up the net income into the source documents, the tax returns. So we're looking at 21, 22, and 23. So we want to see also 2020 and 24. So we are January 2025. We're not going to see nothing in 2025 yet, and that's okay. That gives you a 5-year runway. So once we tie up to the source documents into at every year to the penny, that is accounting 101. You have to be able to think of it. You are yourself an auditor, because that's exactly what the lenders are going to want to do. They're going to want to true up to the source documents, that you're not going to get an approval unless you have tax returns. So that's how we teach. So you're gonna go through that, right? And then we're gonna do the add backs. Now, not all add backs are created equal depending whatever state you're in. There are some types of add backs that we actually use and that are very, very specific to the most lender requirements that are SBA preferred lenders. Obviously you got your officer comp, you got your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. You're gonna have your officer comp and related stuff, and there are other one-time expenses. There are add backs and subtractions that is gonna give you to the SDE. We like seller discretionary earnings before we do adjusted EBITDA. Most deals are going to be in the SDE range. And there's, once you get over $500,000 worth of SDE, then you start recasting an adjusted EBITDA. That's probably a lot more than you want to hear right now. But with that said, deal analysis is basically truing up to a bunch of source documents. That is one tab that I just went over. Then we figured out how we're going to structure the deal and the use of proceeds, and then we superimpose whatever information is given to us from the sim into our deal analysis front line, our front sheet. So once we have that, we're going to start coming up with average at the 3-year. I want a 3-year tax return average of revenue, profit, and net profit, SDE. And then we go and figure out what those businesses are worth per industry NAICS codes according to software I have access to, that my students have access to. We go pull comps, just like you would do if you were buying a property. Pull comps is specific. We want no more than 10 to 15 comps specifically to those industry NAICS codes, revenue size, SDE matching size, like for like, financed by lenders. What do we come up with? What are the trends? What are the evaluation? What does the industry tell us? What can we surmise from all the deals that have been done over the last 10 years? So what about is the business worth? Because in order for you to produce evaluation, you really need two things that are critical. You need a pinpoint accurate seller discretionary earnings, and you need a multiple, whether of SDE or adjusted EBITDA. And the piece of information, you're going to have to research it separately. And once you arrive that you have a value range, we can go plus minus 5 points depending on what the need is, whether you put 5%, 10% down, all of those things kind of come into play, whether we're going to ask for seller financing or not. What does the deal look like in terms of debt service coverage ratio? What is that going to look like for us? Now it's really getting granular as to that is deal analysis. And for you to do it right takes a little bit of time. Now, my average students, when they start, takes them about a day to come up with the deal analysis. Now, I've been doing this for so long, I could actually do it in 5 minutes if I have all the data, but I've been doing 1,000 over deals. Practice makes perfect. Mastery. It's 10,000 hours of doing the same thing, right? So you need somebody looking over your shoulder to make sure the deal analysis is right. Now, then and only then we can actually look at, and I always say this in a lot of my YouTube videos, if you've been following me for some time, and I also say that inside of our group where I actually do 2 live clinics per week. I said, look, whatever the broker and the seller think the business is worth is irrelevant for our purposes, really irrelevant. Because we're going to arrive at our own business valuation that is going to be defensible by a bank. Imagine, if you will, that you're talking on a no-market deal and you already gained the trust of a broker and you actually have the source documents that you need. You do the deal analysis. We come up with a pinpoint accurate value range. You know exactly your offer and your fallback positions so you can negotiate. And by the way, you have the blessing of at least 2 lenders. You have letter of support and you have everything ready to go. Basically, when we actually make an offer and we get a deal under contract, due diligence is incidental, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So what is it that we go after? What do we really want in deal analysis? We want to know one number. That is the king. That is the number one thing that I want you to know if you're looking at our business is debt service coverage ratio, also known as DSCR. The DSCR dictates all. So if you're in the know, if those who watch my videos or those who are my students, you know that I'm looking 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. We had one student just closed last month. We actually closed 12 deals last year whose deal had 4x DSCR. If you know, you know. That was an excellent deal. 4 times cash flow over debt service. Talk about a valuation that was just money, right? We value it at a range and we got a $500,000 price adjustment. Actually, the business was appraised at $500,000 more than what we valued it for, and then we decided it was a really good deal, so we went for it. All of that you know. So what else do you know? Debt service coverage ratio as number 1. You also want to know post-debt service cash flow. Now, if it is a business that has COGS that you're going to need to do a lot of capital expenditures, well, that comes out of the seller discretionary earnings. Now, the reason I like to calculate an SD, not adjusted EBITDA, is because I want to know what the true nut is. What is the real net cash flow before we add you as your salary and wages as an operator? Because you may or not be the operator. What if somebody else is the operator? Now, what if you have a job that you love, you want to leave just yet? Right? So you already come up with a plan to have one of the most tenured employees who's going to be the GM for a while, who you're going to pay X amount of dollars. You don't have to pay yourself. Then you don't need to pay yourself salary. So I don't really like to do that on day one. I like to figure out how much cash flow do I have post this service, and then let me figure out what to do. Do I have any need for capital expenditures? Do I need to set some money aside? So those are the kinds of things. We also look at break-even analysis. What is the worst thing that could happen and is still be able to make the debt service payments on the deal? So we always have a fallback position. We hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Because the thing about what you need to know when buying a business is, yes, you're going to get some huge cash-on-cash returns. It's not uncommon for us to get deals that are 300% cash-on-cash returns, which is, you put in $100,000 worth of down payment, you have $300,000 post-debt service cash flow. That's a $300,000 cash-on-cash return. Where else are you going to get that? But what people forget that it takes work to be able to achieve that. Now, is there such thing as absentee ownership? Yes, absolutely. But you got to earn it. You're not going to get that from day one. So if you think you can just come and buy a business you know nothing about and be completely absentee, you are mistaken. You're not going to be able to do that. To be a true business owner and eventually investor, to be in the I quadrant of the investor cycle, you're going to have to put in some time understanding that business. The reason why the current owner is selling a business that he's developed over 20 years, he only works 10 hours a week because he spent 10 years putting on 50 hours a week to get to the point that it's 10 hours a week. I don't want to overstate that fact. If you ever bought a business, you know what I'm talking about. So what I teach my students is reality. If you're going to step into the role of CEO, let's come up with a plan for you to be able to take the business, and our formula is double it in 5 years or less, but you're going to have the procedures to do that. It's not just buying a business, it's scaling the business once you buy it. Are you stuck in trying to figure out how to buy a business? The truth is you're not alone. This is a rather complex process with many steps and sub-steps in between. So unless you have bought a business before, it's more like an apprenticeship. You really need somebody to help you with it. Somebody who's done a lot of deals like myself. So connect with me, reach out to me. I put all this free content so I can help you achieve your dream of buying a business. You can drop me a comment below. You can send me an email. Either way, I would like to connect with you or have somebody from my team connect with you so we can give you a very detailed plan how you can go out and buy a profitable business. So after all of that, we're only at step 4. Now, what is step 4? Deal making. And I hope, by the way, before I get into this, I hope this video is valuable. Please comment, like, interact with me. I would love this video to really be spread out to everybody. I'm giving you a lot of the information that you think you need. This is no fluff. This is the real stuff. Anyway, deal making. Now, if you have gone through the buy box, the deal flow, and you actually cemented your then really good basic deal analysis, you're ready to start making offers. Here's the cool thing about it. If you did all the work right in the deal analysis phase using our Deal Analyzer 3.0, you basically have set yourself up to do deals. What is deal making? Putting an offer together. Now, some brokers will be out there trying to have you sign an asset purchase agreement without an LOI. Sometimes that happens in deals that are $500,000 or less. I do not recommend that. I do not recommend that you actually go from zero to APA or a stock purchase agreement or asset purchase agreement without having an LOI. That it could be very risky business. I don't recommend it. I don't know if anybody else is recommending it. I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, so deal making is putting a letter of intent to buy a business, non-binding in most states, except for a few clauses. The biggest clause that I want is exclusivity. I want to take this deal off the market so I can open up the hood and take a closer look and do due diligence, which is going to come next. So the main points that we want in deal making is understand the motivation of the seller. What does the seller want? Why do you want to buy this business? What does the seller want? Because the only way you're going to get what you want is to get him what he, or her what she wants. The seller needs to tell you why they're selling a business. You want to be judicious. You want to be inquisitive. You want to know why you're selling this business. And it has to make sense, because what you don't know is that sometimes businesses are being unloaded because they're losing money. The last thing you want to buy is, first of all, you're never going to get a deal under contract, or you're never going to get a deal approved by a lender if it's losing money, because the lenders are not just going to let you get away with it. The lenders are on our side. They're actually here to help you. So why is the business being sold? Is this AI proof? Is this, pandemic proof? Is this recession proof? All of those things. And we actually have inside our group an exhausting 30-question pre-LOI questionnaire that I want every member of our group to do for themselves before we actually make an offer. Assuming that you've gone through all of that, and you convince yourself and you convince me this is a very good deal to buy. All right, how are we going to put this deal together? How much down payment? Now, one of the rules of thumb that I do when very early in the game, we were actually estimating the cost of buying a business, and you're in your buy box scenario. There is an exercise that I have people do, is like, how much business can you buy with the money you have set aside for down payment? Now, is it possible that you can buy a business with no money down? Yes. Under very special circumstances, you can. If you are an owner-operator of a business and you're trying to buy a business in the exact same NAICS code, and you have the management experience and the balance sheet and the credibility and the resume and the personal financial statement to prove it, then yes, you can buy a business in the same NAICS with no money down. But it doesn't happen often. It happens more so. What is more normal is that you put 10% down. 10% down, leverage is if you have 100,000, you can buy $1 million business, on a 3x SDE. That's sort of back of the napkin calculations. Now, to get a little deeper, there are ways that you can get creative. Once you understand the deal and you're looking at the data points and the deal analyzer, then you can start playing with the variables. Well, what if you don't have the working post-closing liquidity and you have 100,000, you want to buy $1 million business, but then to be safe, you only want to put $50,000 down. So that turns into a 5% deal. How do we actually get the other 5%? There are ways that you can do that. For instance, you can actually get the seller to carry 5%. Depending on how strong the debt service coverage ratio is, you can actually go on standby, partial standby, 2 years or 10 years to help you with the cash flow. We go into a lot more detail inside of our group. Then you start to realize, well, if there is a deal that has a lot of competition, there are some industries right now that are hot. There are a lot of people are going for them. So those, in order for you to compete, you're going to have to be closer to the asking price. Or sometimes I have seen businesses that are north of $500,000, and even I have put businesses in the market without a price. And the reason for that, when there's this industry that is in hot demand, we're going to let the market decide what the business is worth. So don't be surprised if you don't have a price, because you're going to have to remember I told you earlier that it doesn't really matter what the broker and the seller say the business is worth. You're going to have to come up with your own valuation anyway. But the thing is, now you don't really know what their target is. And it's best to be prepared. So deal making is looking at all those variables, the industry that this business is in, how profitable it is, how much demand is on this business, how much you know about this business, how much what's your war chest, post-closing liquidity, and how we structure the deal in a way that makes sense. And I would come up with a sort of a middle of the road plus minus, $50,000 per se, and you go and you try to negotiate. Because if you go with your lowest price, the get-go, you're going to negotiate, and you're always going to have to come down. Now, we're starting to do something that we're starting to ask for more working capital on the deals to be financed by the seller. But some of those techniques are advanced, and we reserve those inside of our group. You want to know more, reach out. Number 5, due diligence. Now, this one could be heavy if you're not prepared for it. But the way we make due diligence easier is by having done the work. So what is due diligence? Due diligence is actually you taking the time, putting the deal under the microscope and evaluating 5 categories, really prying open, basically opening up the hood under 5 categories. First, market, finance, market. You got the legal due diligence, you got the finance due diligence, you got the people due diligence, you got the operational due diligence. Market due diligence, right? Is this an industry we want to be in? Now, if you've done your work ahead of time, this is going to be basically very incidental. A lot of people think due diligence is just financial, and yet it's very heavy on the financial side. There's also legal due diligence that is very, very critical. There are many things that I address inside of our buyer's checklist, the things that a lot of people miss on the due diligence side, on the legal side. For instance, one of the things you want to know is, are there any pending, is there any pending litigation on this deal that we should know about? Even though you're buying the assets of the business, it behooves you to know if there's any legal action in the making on the business that you're trying to buy. So there's 5 types of due diligence. And due diligence is when actually you want to get your deal team to come through. One of the things that we talked about earlier is that you are a byproduct of your deal team. And your deal team has to be set long before you make the offer. So who is in your deal team that you're going to need for due diligence? You're going to need an attorney. Not just any attorney, an M&A attorney, a mergers and acquisition attorney who has actually been on both sides, represented sellers, represented buyers in multiple industries in multiple states, that has a lot of feeling, has the templates, it has the experience of negotiating. That's one. You're going to need a accounting due diligence, a CPA, an EA, a financial analyst. Really, a lot of disciplines can do due diligence, ideally due diligence in the type of business and industries that you want to get into yourself. And what they're going to do on the due diligence side, it's things that we basically glossed over when we were trying to make an offer. You're going to start with asking for, the trial balance, the balance sheet, the general ledger, payroll records, W-3s, W-4s, W-2s, anything and everything that goes on the balance sheet, you're going to asset test. We're going to have our due diligence person look at the variability. We're going to true up tax returns against interim financials. And if you're an accountant, you know what I'm talking about. If you're filing on a cash basis, when you run your business on accrual, that delta needs to be reconciled to our liking, and it has to make sense financially and accounting wise. Now, the lender, there's another member of your team, you're going to need a SBA preferred lender that has basically the back phone or the hot phone, red phone with the SBA. You don't want them to have to ask permission to get their SBA code to actually approve this deal. You want to have somebody who's actually done a lot of SBA deals. We have plenty inside of our group, at least 20 SBA lenders who the average tenure is 10 plus years worth of doing deals. Some of them have done $100+ million worth of deals. That's why one on our team advocating for you. So you're going to need, let me take it from the top. So you're going to need an M&A attorney. You're going to be a due diligence CPA or EA or somebody else that has financial expertise. You're going to need an SBA lender, and you're going to need an M&A advisor like me, somebody who actually has expertise in taking deals from beginning to end. I have close to over $100 million worth of deals. I've taken a lot of deals through the ring, and I understand things happen. Things are going to happen throughout the deal that can kill the deal. So there's, you're not going to have your attorney negotiate business points. You need to have negotiated those business points. That's where I step in and help my buyers, making sure our group members, we understand. You first put the business deal together, then you add the legal lease. Same with the lenders are going to care. A deal may be actually good enough. You may actually get a letter of intent and later a letter of commitment from a lender. That doesn't mean that's a deal we want to go through. Does the rate make sense? Does the risk make sense? Remember, you're the one stuck with the personal guarantee. So it's not good enough that the lender approves the deal. It has to make sense in context of everything else. So due diligence, we used to be in a position that we needed 30 days to do due diligence. I think we need more now. I think we need about 60 days to do due diligence, right? Because you're going to be exchanging information. You're going to be asking for information. It may take 3 weeks to a month to get. If you're asking for a 30-day due diligence period, you're in trouble. Remember, you're going to live and die by the deadlines that you set forth in the letter of intent that you've had fully executed. So you have to know what you're doing. So due diligence. So that's really, really key. So let me step into number 6, financing. So if you're looking at financing, okay, here's what you need to know. If you get a deal under contract and you haven't had that deal vetted by an SBA lender, then you're playing catch up. That's not what I teach. What I teach is look under the hood of a deal, befriend the broker, get to know the business broker, get the SIM, get the tax returns, run it through our deal analysis. Let's talk about the deal inside of our group and our community. Let's validate the deal. Let's poke holes at it. Let's do the a SWOT analysis. Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. Let's put it through the ringer. Let's have the lender vet the deal, make sure we're comfortable with it. Let's validate the debt service coverage ratio. Let's have multiple data points on that. And then what we really want is we want a couple of lenders to say, you know what, I will do that deal. Definitely. I'm going to give you a letter of intent. I got everything I need. And they know, sometimes lenders will know that they're competing with somebody else because you're not really committed to a lender until you have signed the letter of commitment, which means you're committing yourself to the lender and the lender is committing themselves to you. So once you have a letter of commitment, unless something really, really bad happens inside the deal that we didn't see, that deal is going to close. You turn into a cash buyer. So financing. So let me give you some real stats or data about financing. So from the minute, now it could take anywhere from a day to a month to get the deal, looked up and you get a letter of intent. So if a lender has everything they need to give you a letter of intent, we intend to do this deal, but that's not a commitment from the lender. Basically saying we want to do this deal, but they're not legally committed yet. So they're going to issue a letter of intent. From that day forward, they may take another 3 weeks to a month to get the deal committed. Once the deal is committed, they're going to sign a closer, depending on how big the bank is. They're going to sign a closer, and that closer may take 30 days. So do the math. It may take you 30 days to get the letter of intent, another 30 days to get the deal committed, another 30 days to close. So you want to be expeditious as a buyer. You want to do all this work ahead of time. So you want to go from letter of intent to letter of commitment in a week or less. Because if you do that right, ideally what you want is to have the letter of commitment from the lender while you're still inside of due diligence. Remember, you have 2 timelines of which you can opt out of the deal. You got your due diligence period, which we can legally opt out of the deal. And that is even if you have an APA, an asset purchase agreement, or you have the due diligence piece. So I like to have the deal pre-approved, committed by the lender inside of the 60-day window of due diligence. So financing and due diligence are simultaneous. They're happening at the same time. When you're working with one of our due diligence people, we assign somebody a due diligence to work with you. And then we already have the lender. So we have the deal team working together simultaneously with multiple calls, getting the team. I teach all of that inside our group. So once all of that is in place and you have a fully executed APA, we go into number 7, which is escrow. Now, escrow is the third neutral party that is going to handle the monies. Now, here is a pro tip. A lot of buyers will actually give earnest money to a broker outside of escrow. Don't ever do that. If you did that, you're going to have a hard time getting that money back if the deal falls through. So what I teach is you got to get that as a purchase agreement. And remember, think about it from this way. You really don't have anything binding until you have the asset purchase agreement. That is the document that leads them all. That's the top legal document. That's probably the most expensive document put together. It's a document that is anywhere from 15 to 30 or 40 pages, depending on how complex the deal is. The asset purchase agreement is what the ticket that opens escrow. Now we've got ourselves a deal. Usually when everything is in line, it should take no more than 30 to 45 days to close. Now, some of those timelines actually run with each other simultaneously. So escrow, there are escrow states and there are attorney states. So check with your own state. California is an escrow state. I think Texas is an attorney state. So I believe. So what happens is that escrow is going to want to make sure that they keep their hands clean. The only thing that they're going to do is validate whatever buyer and seller want. Everybody works for the buyer and seller. Fully executed documents from both buyer and seller is what makes things go forward. So they're going to want to make sure that if you're buying the assets of a business, is this business really free and clear? Are these assets that you're buying really free and clear? They're going to have to use UCC searches, lien searches. You're going to have to clear those liens. You're going to buy those assets free and clean and free and clear of any loans, encumbrances, any blemish on the title of any of the assets that you're buying. Those assets have to be free and clear, which means no debt. You're buying clear of any debt. So that takes work. And there are multitude of other searches, state and federal searches that are going to have to take place. Don't ever skip escrow. It's dangerous. I always recommend whenever you can do escrow, get a third party neutral. There is where you give your money to, your earnest money, whatever, 5, 10, 15, 20,000, whatever you committed to in the LOI, that's where it goes. Escrow is very key. So when you're closing escrow, normally the way it happens is once everything is set to go, the lender will work in concert with escrow to make sure that the lender's documents make it to escrow. But that's not the only documents that there are. There is a bunch of other documents sometimes that need to be, there's all these addendums and non-competes and allocation of purchase price documents that actually work with the asset purchase agreement. They have to be all reconciled inside of escrow. So you may end up with a package that is 100 pages. I've seen packages, closing packages that are hundreds of pages long. So there's a lot of back and forth documents that happen inside of escrows. You need to have a neutral party handling all of that. And those are all legal documents. So when you show up to closing, closing is kind of a big deal when you're buying a business. You're going to sit at a table and going to sign a lot of documents, the lender's documents. There are some attorney documents that you're going to have to sign. There's some state documents. There's escrow documents. There's warrants and provisions from either side. Things are going to get clear through escrow. Escrow is the one that disperses the money. The deal is funded. Lender will send the money over to escrow. Escrow disperses all the funds, and then you got a buyer settlement and you got a seller settlement agreement. They don't see each other. There's a lot of fees that are associated with the seller that the buyer doesn't see. Likewise, there's a lot of deals that the buyer deals with that the seller is not going to see. There's going to be money being moved back and forth. So once you make it through all that and you have an escrow date, now what I tell my students is, look, watch your timeline very, very, very closely. You cannot be in violation of the dates that you set forth in your asset purchase agreement. So when that escrow date, the closing date, is there for a reason. You cannot violate that escrow closing date, because if you do, you're at risk of losing the deal. So what happens when you have somebody on my team? We're always looking, when is the deal, this closing date? Say that your closing date was January 31st and we're at January 24th, 2025, and the deal hasn't closed. It's going to take 2 more weeks. We need to get an extension signed by both parties in order to not violate the dates. Dates are very, very important in escrow. Once all of that is done, then it's where closing takes place. Closing is basically the final walkthrough and the signing on the documents, essentially the handing off the key from the seller to the buyer, and thus begins your journey as a business owner. So guys, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please let me know what you guys think. For a limited time, we're giving away our Deal Analyzer 2.0, which is a tool that has been downloaded probably 4,000 times by now, in which it shows you everything you need to know about how to do a first run on a deal when you're looking at that, whether on market or off market, cash on cash return, debt service coverage ratio, pre and post debt service cash flow, break-even analysis, multi-year run of debt service or cash flow over debt service, etc. And it's my gift to you. Has over 100 formulas. All you have to do is download it. I'm also giving away our business buyers checklist that is 6 pages long, compiled by me and lenders and attorneys, that if all you had was this tool, all you had to do is like a punch list. You just follow along and get everything you need to buy a business. So all those things are my gift to you. All you have to do is click on the links below to download them.